Okay, everybody, I hope you are doing well this weekend, and I hope you are getting ready for your test. So what this is right now are the Test Practice A video solutions. So the directions, I'm on number 1. The directions for number 1 are simplify. And so the first thing that we're going to do here when we are simplifying this is we are going to factor. Okay, so we are going to factor our numerator and we're going to factor our denominator. So our numerator has got a couple different steps. So I am going to write the numerator off to the side. I've got x to the third plus x squared plus 18x. And x is going to come out of all of those. So I am left with x squared plus 11x plus 18. Now don't forget about that x, because that will come back and we'll use that later. But then the x squared plus 11x plus 18, that is going to factor to x plus 2 and x plus 9, because 2 times 9 equals 18 and 2 plus 9 equals 11. So that is my numerator. I have x plus 2, and x plus 9. So I have factored my numerator. Now my denominator is the product of 72 and a sum of 17. And so that factors to x plus 8 and x plus 9. And that is because 8 times 9 is 72 and 8 plus 9 is 17. So now we can cancel our x plus 9s, and so our final answer to this one is going to be x times x plus 2 over x plus 8, and that is our number 1. Okay, let's move on to number 2. Now, number 2 looks a little bit different because we have 9 minus 8, and I think that that's a super important thing for us to be able to identify, because it looks backwards from what we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing x minus 9. So I can leave my 9 minus x the same, and then I can do my denominator. And when I factor x squared minus 81, I get x plus 9, x minus 9, because x squared minus 81 is the difference of perfect squares. What happens with this 9 minus x? If I factor out a negative 1, I get negative 9 plus x. And I can rewrite that as x minus 9. So I've actually got to factor out a negative 1. And that is a different idea. We've done it a couple times, but I want you to be aware of that. So we are factoring out a negative 1 there. So what I end up having is negative 1 times x minus 9 over x plus 9. Okay, then we are able to, whoops, I'm sorry, I didn't write down the whole denominator. That's x plus 9, x minus 9. So I just brought down the entire denominator. So I have negative 1, x minus 9 in the numerator, x plus 9 times x minus 9 in the denominator. So now I can cancel the x minus 9 and the x minus 9, and so my final answer here is negative 1 over x plus 9, and so here is your answer. Okay, number 3. So number 3, the directions say multiply or divide, then we are going to simplify. So I've got to multiply or divide and then simplify. Again, the first thing that we're going to do here is factor. So in my numerator here, I've got a sum of 10 and a product of 16. So that's going to be k plus 8 and k plus 2, because 8 times 2 is 16 and 8 plus 2 is 10. The denominator, I've got k squared plus 13k plus 40. And so here I'm going to get k plus 8 times k plus 5, because 8 times 5 is 40 and 8 plus 5 is 13. Now in my numerator of my second rational, all I can factor out is a k, and I'm left with k plus 5. In my denominator, I'm going to have k minus 9 and k plus 2. And the reason for that is negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. So now that I have everything factored, now I can start cross-canceling. And if it's on the top and it's on the bottom, I can cancel it. It doesn't have to necessarily be cross-cancel. So then I've got k plus 2 and k plus 2, k plus 5 and k plus 5. So I actually was able to get rid of quite a few things. And so my final answer here is going to be k over k minus 9. And that is number 3. Okay, so now let's do number 4. Number 4 is division. This is division. So the first thing I'm going to do is keep, change, flip. I'm going to keep, change, flip. So I have z squared plus 5z plus 6 over z squared plus 6z plus 8. Then I am going to multiply that times z squared plus 6z plus 8. So I am doing the reciprocal of my second rational. So I kept my first rational, I changed my division to multiplication, and I flipped, or I made the second rational its reciprocal. Now I'm going to factor. Okay? So for the numerator of my first rational, I'm going to have z plus 2 times z plus 3. And that factors to that because 2 times 3 is 6. 2 plus 3 is 5. Then in the denominator, I'm going to have z plus 4 and z plus 2 because 4 times 2 is 8. 4 plus 2 is 6. Then in the numerator of my second one, it looks like I have exactly that again. I do. I have z plus 4 and z plus 2 because that is exactly, I don't know if you noticed that or not, this is the same as this. So then our numerator and our denominator. So in general, we wouldn't have to factor that because we could cancel that as a trinomial. It is a good idea just to go ahead and cancel those, though. I mean, to factor those before you cancel because it keeps everything nice and factored out. Now that I have everything factored, I can start canceling, and we know those trinomials were the same, so that we can cancel those. Then I have z plus 3 and z plus 3. So my final answer here is z plus 2 over z. Okay, now I think we have one more division before we move into addition and subtraction. Yes, we do. One more division. Number 5, x squared minus 25 over x squared minus 8x plus 16 divided by 10x minus 50 over x squared minus x minus 12. So we are going to keep, change, flip first. Some students decide to factor and keep, change, flip at the same time. Just be very careful if that's what you do. Just be very careful. I'm changing my division sign to multiplication, and then I am doing the reciprocal. X squared minus x minus 12, 10x minus 50. And now I'm going to factor. Okay, x squared minus 25. That is a difference of perfect squares. So I have x plus 5, x minus 5. Okay, my denominator, x squared minus 8x plus 4, that is a perfect square trinomial, but that is not something that you have to have memorized. What you need to know is that negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, and negative 4 plus negative 4 is negative 8. X squared minus x minus 12, that factors to x minus 4 and x plus 3. Because negative 4 and positive 3 equals negative 12. Negative 4 plus 3 equals negative 1. And then in the denominator, we factor out a 10, and I'm left with x minus 5. At this point, if it's in the numerator and the denominator, I can cancel it. So I have x minus 5 and x minus 5. x minus 4 and x minus 4. And I think that is it. So my final answer for number 5 is x plus 5 in the numerator and x plus 3 in the numerator. Then in the denominator, I have 10 and I have x minus 4. And you do not have to multiply those out. You are done at this point. Now, the first 5 problems that we have done have been simplifying and multiplication and division. Okay? The steps for simplifying and for multiplication and division are in general, you got to factor. You kind of factor everything. We're about to move into addition. So the next couple of problems that we are going to do are addition problems. And when you have addition, you've got to shift your thinking. When we move into addition and subtraction, we have to have an LCD. Before we do anything else, we have to have an LCD. Sometimes, in order to determine that LCD, you want to factor. Okay, so you're still using factoring, but you're not crossing and canceling the same way that you do with multiplication and division. You cancel a lot. Okay, you're canceling a lot with multiplication and division. With addition and subtraction, you're not. So you're really not going to cancel as much. Every once in a while you will. You are not going to cross cancel or cancel from the numerator and the denominator. You might combine like terms in the numerator. That is something that happens when we're adding and subtracting. But you are not cross-canceling or canceling when you are adding, okay? So that's a good thing to think about. Now, for this particular problem right here, we have x squared, which is x times y. So my LCD, I'm just kind of focusing on this one right here. I've got x squared times y. That's x times y. Now, for our second denominator, we have x times y squared. So that's x times y times y. So we are missing a y here. So my denominator, my least common denominator, is going to be x squared y squared, because you've got to account for everything. So now I have 3 over x squared y, and then I have 2 over x y squared. So now I ask myself, what's missing? So in this first one, I've got x squared y. So I am missing a y. So if I multiply the denominator times y, I've got to multiply the numerator times y. In the second one, I've got x times y squared. So I am missing an x. Okay? So if I multiply the denominator by x, I have to multiply the numerator by x. So now my LCD is taken care of. So I have x squared, y squared. And I'm left with 3y plus 2x on the top. We're not cross-canceling anything. I would look to see if there's anything in my numerator that I need to combine. But I don't have anything in there that I need to combine. So I stop there. Okay? Okay. Now, number 7, we are going to attack this the same way. We're going to kind of do the same thing. Now, our first goal here is to find our LCD. So we are trying to find our LCD. In order to do that, we do need to factor one of the denominators. So factoring does come into play, but not to cancel it. Factoring comes into play so that we can find our LCD. So I am going to factor x squared minus 9. So that's x plus 3 and x minus 3. And then I have plus x over x minus 3. So my LCD, I write down x plus 3, x minus 3. And then, because that's what my first denominator is. My second denominator is only x minus 3, but it's already covered. It's already covered in the x plus 3, x minus 3. So I don't have to write down anything else. My first fraction, or rational, 8x over x plus 3, x minus 3, already has both of the denominator, or both of the factors that I need for my least common denominator. So I don't have to do anything with that. I do have to multiply my second one, x plus 3 over x plus 3, because it is missing the x plus 3. So now my denominator is taken care of. And so I have x plus 3, x minus 3 in the denominator. I have 8x. Then I'm distributing my x here. So then I have x squared plus 3x. Now, I'm not going to cancel anything from the numerator and the denominator, but do you see how I have this 8x here and this 3x here? Those can be combined. So my final answer here does need to combine those two, and I'm left with x squared plus 11x. Okay, and so then my x plus 3, x minus 3 stays in the denominator. Okay, now it looks like we are doing equations. Now the difference between what we had on number 7 and what we have on number 8 is the equal sign. Here we are adding two rationals together. There is no equals. We can't multiply everything by the LCD. Here we do have an equal sign. If you see that equal sign right there, that makes all the difference. So when we have that equal sign, we multiply the entire equation by the LCD. Okay, so we multiply everything by the LCD. So the first thing that we've got to find out is what is the LCD. Okay, and another thing that you want to keep an eye on is this minus right here. So don't lose that minus sign. That's another place that gets students into trouble. So I've got 8 over y plus 3. And I'm going to change this minus to a plus, and I'm going to move that negative to the numerator. It's just easier to deal with. Okay, and then I am going to do 12 over y plus 3, y minus 3. And so I am able to identify my LCD as y plus 3 times y minus 3. So my next step is to multiply my entire equation by y plus 3 times y minus 3 over 1. So I've got y plus 3 times y minus 3 over 1 times 8 over y plus 3. And then I'm going to do that again. Y plus 3 times y minus 3 over 1. And I am multiplying that times negative 2 over y minus 3. Now I'm going to have to erase my LCD so that I can keep going, but we know what our LCD is at this point. So now I have 12 over y plus 3 times y minus 3, and I am multiplying that times y plus 3, y minus 3 over 1. So now we are going to get to cross some stuff out, which is what we want. So I have y plus 3 and y plus 3. So here I am left with 8 times y minus 3. Here I've got y minus 3 and y minus 3, so I'm left with negative 2. Remember, we moved that negative to the numerator, times y plus 3. Then here I canceled both of these out. So that works out super nicely, and I'm just set equal to 12. Okay, so I'm going to distribute. I've got 8y minus 24 Then I have negative 2y minus 6. 8y and negative 2y give me 6y. Minus 24 and minus 6 give me negative 30. Okay, I add 30 to both sides. Oops. Okay, and then I'm going to move this right over here. So at this point, I end up with 6y equals 42. And I get y equals 7. Now I still need to go back and check. Does y equals 7 make this undefined? And it doesn't, so I'm okay. Okay, y equals 7 does not make that undefined, so I am good. And so y equals 7 is my final answer. Okay, now let's look at number 9. Okay, so we are going to factor that x squared minus 64. So I'm going to have x over x minus 8 plus negative 8. Do you see how I moved that to the numerator? Okay, so I moved this negative and I put it in the numerator so that I wouldn't lose it. Equals 128 over x plus 8, x minus 8. Okay, x plus 8, x minus 8. Okay, so our LCD and what we want to multiply everything by is going to be x plus 8, x minus 8. So we're going to multiply each individual thing times x plus 8 and x minus 8. Okay, so I have x plus 8 times x minus 8 over 1. And I am multiplying that times x over x minus 8. Okay, then I'm doing it again. X plus 8 times x minus 8 over 1. So that equals, or times negative 8 over x plus 8. Okay, and that negative 8 is because we moved that minus sign to our numerator. That's where that comes from. Then I have 128 over x plus 8, x minus 8, and I am multiplying that times our LCD, which is x plus 8, x minus 8 over 1. Now we get to cross cancel a bunch of stuff, or cancel out. So I've got x minus 8 and x minus 8. That leaves me with x times x plus 8. X plus 8 and x plus 8 cancel, so now I'm left with negative 8 and x minus 8. Okay. And then I have equals 128. Because our x plus 8, x minus 8 cancels with x plus 8, x minus 8. So now I distribute. I have x squared plus 8x minus 8x plus 64. Okay? So this negative, I've got to distribute it to both. And that equals 128. When I combine, I've got 8x and negative 8x. So I have x squared plus 64 equals 128. When I subtract 128 from both sides, I'm left with a difference of perfect squares. I'm left with x squared minus 64 equals 0. Okay, so I have x squared minus 64 equals 0. X squared minus 64 equals 0 is x plus 8 times x minus 8. Okay? And when I set each one of these equal to 0, I end up with x equals negative 8 and x equals positive 8. But we have to go back up here. Look at this right here. I've got x minus 8 and I've got x plus 8. If I put negative 8 into here, I get 0. If I put positive 8 into here, I get 0. We have to throw both of these out. So my answer to this is no solution. That's my answer, no solution. And that's because both the 8 and the negative 8 make my denominator 0, and we're not allowed to have a denominator of 0. And so we have to throw both of them out, and the answer to this is no solution. Okay, last one. Now I will do this using long division, and I will do this using synthetic division. Okay, so in long division, I'm going to take the x minus 3, and I am going to put it in the box. X minus 3 goes in the box. Okay, and then my 3x to the 4th minus 9x to the 3rd plus 2x squared minus 6x goes inside my division box. But do you see how I don't have a constant right here? That there's no plus a number? So I have to put plus 0, and I'm going to have to do that for synthetic division also. But I have to account for that constant that's not there. So the first thing that I do is I say, okay, x times what is going to give me 3x to the 4th? And the answer to that is 3x to the 3rd. Okay, 3x to the 3rd. So 3x to the 3rd times negative 3 is going to give me 9x to the 3rd. 3x to the 3rd times x is going to give me 3x to the 4th. But remember, we are subtracting, and that's a place that we make mistakes. So I'm going to subtract, and subtracting a negative turns this into a positive. Okay, so negative 9x to the 3rd plus 9x to the 3rd, that cancels, and I'm left with 0. 3x to the 4th minus 3x to the 4th also gives me 0. Now, we were expecting to get a 0 here. You probably weren't expecting to get a 0 here. And that's okay. We're still just going to bring down this term right here. So I've got plus 2x squared. Now, we are asking ourselves, x times what gives us 0? And the answer to that is 0. Okay, now if you had said x times what gives me 2x squared, and you said 2x, you would have been okay, but just remember it's better to put that x to the first wherever the x to the first is. That's kind of a place value thing, and that's helpful. Okay, so then we have, and I'm going to go ahead and bring down my negative 6x. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. 2x times x is 2x squared. And we are subtracting. Okay, and so again, they both disappear and I'm left with 0. Okay, and that's good because I have a remainder of 0. If you said x goes into 0, how many times? You're going to put another 0. But our answer is going to be the 3x to the 3rd plus 2x. So my final answer here is 3x to the 3rd plus 2x. And I have a remainder of 0, so I'm good. So this right here is my final answer. Now, a few of you are doing synthetic division. So I do want to show you how to do this one with synthetic division. So before I do that, I've got to erase everything. That's 9x to the 3rd. Let me erase that and put 9x to the 3rd. Okay, now for this, for synthetic division, we look at this right here. Okay, x minus 3 is our factor, so 3 is our solution. And this isn't something that you need to master this course. It's just something that I wanted you to be exposed to. Then I'm going to put each one of the coefficients. So I have 3 for x to the 4th, negative 9 for x to the 3rd, 2 for x squared, negative 6 for x, but I have to put a 0 in. Got to put a 0 in for that constant. Okay? So now I'm going to bring down my 3. Okay, 3 times 3 is 9. So I'm left with a 0 again, and that's okay. 3 times 0 is 0. So I bring down my 2. 3 times 2 is 6. Negative 6 and 6 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. Okay, so I'm still going to end up with the same thing that I did with my long division. This is always my remainder. So I do not have a remainder, and we know that from the long division. This is always my constant. Okay, this is my x coefficient. This is my x squared coefficient. And this is my x to the third coefficient. So my answer here is 3x to the third plus 2x, and I have no remainder. So it doesn't matter which way you do it, you get the same things. Now, I want to spend just a couple minutes talking about how to study for this, and you've got all sorts of resources that you can use. Okay, number 1, I'm posting the homework solutions right now, the homework written solutions. Those are ways for you to check your homework and to see where your mistakes might be. Okay? The second thing to review is the quiz that we did a week or so ago. Okay? That quiz is a good thing to review. The third thing to look at is your practice test A. And you've got video solutions to practice test A. And you've also got a practice test B that you can go back. Now, your test is on Monday or Tuesday, depending on when you have class. So I will check emails a little bit later tonight and respond as I can. So good luck, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you guys on Monday or Tuesday.